Okay, today I would like to talk about trance meditation, that is mindfulness, and spontaneous expression of energy. We need to be able to differentiate between these states which one can fall into, so that we can ascertain as to what we are doing actually in this practice. Surprisingly, these states are not quite understood and often equated. Some say trance is a form of meditation, whatever. It's not true. So let's clarify what is what. First of all, what is mindfulness? Mindfulness we can ascertain it by stages. Basically, it means that mind is full of an object, as designated by name. But stages go as follows. We have initial application of attentiveness to the object. We have sustained application. Attentiveness is held on the object. Which you probably know from the levels of jhana. Then we have merging with the object and is full of the object. So this is here where meditation begins. From here we have disappearance. Disappearance of both awareness of the object and the object, which equals samadhi, which equals meditation proper. Only here is meditation. Here is access concentration, in the neighborhood concentration. Here it's merged, boom, absorption. Yeah, full of the object means absorption. From there, disappearance follows. So that's the stages of mindfulness. That and only that is meditation in the correct sense of a term. When you are aware of something, you're not meditating. You are applying your awareness to something. That is all. That is not meditation. But it can develop to other stages into meditation, but it's not easy. Now, what's important here is that we are relying on our conscious attentiveness. Means use of attention. Use of attention. We're relying on the attention to apply it to the object. Crucial difference between mindfulness and trance is that we do not dissolve the barrier between attentiveness and the object, between the observer and the observed. That's the crucial difference. Now, what is trance? To understand what trance is, we need to understand what conscious and unconscious are, which I hope you have familiarized yourself with via psychoanalytic theory. Trance is a dissolution. Dissolution, too many O's, but whatever, of barrier. That was a massive thunder. Hopefully my electricity won't get cut off, because if it will, there won't be any light. Dissolution of the barrier between conscious and unconscious. So this barrier here is dissolved. We have equivalence here, and that's what pertains to trance. Now, trance also uses attentiveness. Trance is not daydreaming. Daydreaming is daydreaming. Daydreaming is loss of an object. Ta-da! And you're in La La Land. Which of course can bring about some unconscious formations. Yeah? But it's useless because you cannot recollect them as such and you're not really acting upon them. Later, through analysis, perhaps dream work, you can recollect them, but as a phenomenon, it's just a loss of attentiveness. Yeah. Trance uses attention such that it applies it to a particular, in a particular way to dissolve the barrier. Yeah. There is no trance without attentiveness, at least initial stages of trance, up to complete possession. There one loses attentiveness consciously, completely. One is gone, one is possessed. We will get there. Well, we're not gonna get possessed, but we'll get to discussing it. But there is attentiveness, of course, without trance. Yeah. And mindfulness is that. So what's important, and that's the usefulness of trance, that intrapsychic division is overcome. Trance is overcoming of neurotic intrapsychic division. And that's where it's useful for neurotics. It can be also useful for semi-fusion type subjectivity, such as perverted subjectivity, because there is a split there as well, which can be overcome, but it's a never complete task. In perverted subjectivity, there can be genuine benefit because that split, characteristic perverted split, is overcome temporarily. Yeah. Within neurosis, it's also beneficial. That's why we have such love to trance or entrancing activities within culture. Parties, music festivals, drugs, alcohol, fun, theater, games, whatever, sporting activities, sex, anything that overcomes intrapsychic division, which is the characteristic of neurosis, it has to do with trance. Yeah, there is certain frequency of trance which is entered. Amongst traditional ways how the trance is induced, induction, well, music, repetitive, rhythmical music. Of course, with live instruments, drums, the best, really, for the trance. Movement, yeah. Repetitive, Jesus, movement. Ritual, which always, of course, involves some kind of repetitive movement. Dance. Dance. Incense. Often all of these are combined in traditional trance practices. I have participated in many trance rituals across Indonesia and Malaysia, and this is the common these are common elements of what's going on there. Somebody pounding the drum, starts playing music, incense is steaming, frankincense, whatever other flavors, sometimes they stick them in your face. Certain ritual occurs, shaman is there, certain movement is exercised, whatever. Not as common as the change of eye focus, which can be willfully induced, but that's bordering on our discussion of the states of trance, so we'll touch upon it in a moment. Theater. Theater, catharsis, are entrancing experiences. Hypnosis. But here one doesn't use one's own attentiveness, but someone else does that for them, thus causing that regression and complete merging into the unconscious. This is the beginning of psychoanalysis, by the way. So, that's the ways of induction. Note that they elaborate, aren't they? Music, dance, repetition, there is some kind of sequence, some kind of ritual that needs to be followed. Whereas for mindfulness, all you need is an object and attention. Another category, flow state. Flow state. There is quite a bit of hype about flow states, how to enter flow states these days. What is flow state? It's a form of trance. Light trance. Whereby one's conscious and unconscious energies are channeled into action, powered by enthusiastic effort. That's my definition of flow states. I'm not gonna write it down. You can hear it, whatever. So basically, conscious and unconscious energies in a light trance are both channeled with enthusiastic effort into the activity which one ultimately enjoys. It's quite tricky to enter flow state without whilst doing something you despise. This is why it's flow, because nothing interrupts from the inside. Conscious activity doesn't overjam unconscious, and unconscious simply flows in, provided especially when one is virtuosic in what one's doing, one's craft. Hence, that can be in a continuous flow state. It can be done like so, and people love it because it's stimulating. It's easeful. You flow. You just do. Act, channel that energy in, unconscious energy, which is cool. Nothing wrong with that. So, let us look at the stages of trance, or what kinds of focus there can be. This is very much connected with the eye focus. The way eyes change dictates what sort of trance state one is at. So to simply differentiate it, let's say there is a focus. And that's conscious. One is fully conscious. Everyday focus, like now I'm talking to you in a focus. B focus, like sporting events, playing games, acute focus, it's all a focus. It's conscious, it's determined, it's goal-oriented, whatever. B focus, blur, liminality. As if having just woken up. Like if I am now here, looking as if here, about a meter away from me at my hand, but without focusing on it so much so that I am dissolving a little bit that frontier. So gradually, if I stay in this focus like this, if you see how I am now, my gaze, gradually I'll start falling into that state of trance. And if I modulate my body, shape my voice according to that state which I'm now entering, it will be gradually changing liminality, going deeper to C focus. Here dissolution happens. Dissolution of barrier. So flow states exist somewhere here between B and C focus, because in C focus it's quite hard to consciously act, so to speak, Or I would say around these areas is where flow state exists, because you need some kind of conscious intentionality to perform action you want within the flow state. So like conscious intentionality is suspended, the direction is given, whilst then unconscious knowing and skillfulness then simply executes the action. That's all. That's all there is for the flow state. Now you also have D focus. And that's possession. One is completely overtaken by that which arises from the inside. And depending on the context, possession can be either one's, how do you call it, self-induced possession, self-induced possession, meaning that the aspects of one's unconscious overtake one and manifest, having completely erased the conscious agency. Yeah. Then we have, within more traditional trance practices, possession by ancestral spirits. It's not easy to be possessed by them like for an everyday Western person. You need to be a part of a traditional society and take part in the traditional trance practices. Same goes with the next one, animal spirits. Animal spirits. Then spirits of the place, the local spirits, which carry across the certain genius loci. So that one starts to be overtook by the qualities of the environment, I suppose. But in their understanding, it's literally the spirits of the place, wherever spirits live there. And another category, which shaman from Indonesia put forth, is by genes. Genes, which are neither any one of those, but are other entities which can possess one. And that's ultimately what Western folks like myself, taking part in these trance practices in Java, would be possessed by, because it's not really possible for us to be possessed by ancestral spirits, because they are very much particular to that culture that trance is practiced in. Yeah. It is possible for a kind of foreigner to be possessed by animal spirits. Yes, it did happen to me. By spirits of the place as well, but very commonly by genes, which also involves kind of idiosyncratic rendering of the atmosphere through one's bias and preference, through one's unconscious. But it's not necessarily the self-induced possession, which is only one's unconscious formations that possess one. This is, again, something else, and we're not going to go into whatever Arabic or Muslim rendering of what genes are here, but the shaman which told me about them implied that one can literally be possessed by that as well. So there are benefits to possession, of course, having been possessed by a spirit, fully having completely lost the recollection, which never really happened to me. One can experience a great deal of rewiring on the psychic level, yeah, which may result in a profound sense of release and as if becoming renewed as a person to a certain extent on the level of the psyche. But that's not gonna bring about any cardinal change in regards to one's fundamental makeup as a consciousness appropriating the body, being stuck in delusion of self, etc. It's not going to do anything with that. It only is going to bring about changes on the intrapsychic level, which can be cool, beneficial, a kind of reshuffling on the level of one's acquired self. And lots of people are really after that, actually, to kind of somehow make their life better. That's why people do therapy, analysis, to somehow rearrange their internal dwelling, which is not as different from rearranging the external dwellings, obsession with renovations, whatever, so that they kind of feel more comfortable or whatever. Again, it's not going to do much in the sense of spiritual development, but can make one's life more comfortable. However, there are also disadvantages to possession. And those involve that the possession is a subject to self-delusion. You never really know unless someone with the Evgenii eyes, with psychic abilities, can see a shaman, skillful shaman can see the spirits and can see and tell you what did happen to you, what you've been possessed with. Unless that is present, you'll be imagining things, and that's always a danger. You might be thinking, oh, spirit of the animal or the whatever ancestor or gene whatever possesses me, but it will be just your self-induced delusion. That's the danger. So it does may bring about more distortion, more delusion, undermining our clarity. Another disadvantage is that the entities which possess one, even if they do actually possess one such spirits, they're never truly fully benevolent when we take into account spiritual practices. Entities never fully benevolent. So what is benevolence in this sense? Well, it's the escape of from samsara. That's the highest good, highest benevolence when we take into account spiritual practice. It's the liberation of your mind and merging with the spirit. Entities are not interested in you doing that. They have their own vested interests. Mostly it's the power. They want power over you. They want whatever, something else. So the bottom line here is we do not trust spirits. Even the Devic, angelic beings, are not to be trusted because their best interest is that you arose to Deva realm and hang out with them. And that's perpetuation of samsara, basically, because samsara is another, Devic realm is another realm of samsara, which, when your karma is exhausted there, is going to end for you, fall back to the human realm, so even lesser than that. So, following the calls of the angels and speaking to the angels or whatever else, apart from being subject to self-delusion, and even if not, in a sense of spiritual practice, is not beneficial. However, if spiritual practice is not your interest, if you want to go hang out with devas in the Deva realm or whatever, by all means. But devas is not the only entities there are. There are also ghosts, there are also demonic entities, there are also asura, angry goats, as they're called in Buddhism. Well, of course, they're animals, animal spirits. None of them are to be trusted. However, all of them can possess one. There are possibilities. Possession by a demonic entity is, well, that's horrible. There is no return from there. But it's very, very, very rare. Impossible. Nearly true. Often people think that they are possessed by something, by a ghost or a demon or whatever, due to their internal psychic distress. But more often than not, it's that, it's self-induced possession due to their own mental states they've cultivated out of fear, aversion, greed, whatever, simply overtaking them, the parts of themselves which they have separated from themselves, having not processed them, just overtake them and cause all plethora of disturbances. Deviation of the flow of energy within the body can also be perceived as the possessions or ghost invasions, which are not that. Those are very rare. So all of that pertains to possession, yeah. The regression to unconscious material. So dangers are those. If one genuinely is taken into ceremony and brought through the possession by a skillful shaman, yeah, experiences that of release, profound internal rearrangement, that's wholesome. But if not, dangers are a lot. So, what is beneficial? Dissolution of barrier without falling into possession. That's what's beneficial. We want it, especially the majority of neurotics who are fully identified with their self-acquired mind and operating under that modus operandi. We want to kind of step back from it, yeah. Well, and people do. Partying, drugs, alcohol, sex, it's all a common hunt, yeah. If you're not working, you're doing that. Yeah. Conscious activity, work, merging of the barrier, trance, back to work. That seems to be how the world rolls. Of course, for spiritual practice, you want something else. But we also do not disregard this, because we don't want to carry around the continuous neurosis, continuous pressure of unconscious formations. At some stage, before we really got into the capacity to actually deal with them via mindfulness, with all these unconscious formations, we may as well use this, because this is more effective, and straight away like that. Go have a dance, go chill out with friends, as long as it's not breaking precepts, not intoxicating oneself, and not hurting anybody. It's all good. It helps you to be more genuine with respect to whatever unconscious drives there are. And you want to harness that energy as well, because that's our vitality. One more disclaimer in regards to the possession. And in general, the dissolution of the barrier. Even here, what subjectivities it can be dangerous for? Of course, fusion type. Fusion type subjectivities are not really going to benefit from dissolution of barrier, because the sense of self is already shaky, it's not quite shaped. As we know, within psychotic, for example, subjectivity, ideal ego is what one identifies with, but ego ideal, that which one that way in which one sees oneself in the other's eyes, is not there. Meaning that there is no name of the father, no organizing signifier that structures the psychic continuum. So when fusion occurs of conscious and unconscious, which ultimately means, because there is no unconscious within psychotic structure, there is only rejected. Rejected merges with the conscious, causing the plethora of on the border of psychotic break of phenomenology. And we don't really want that. It's dangerous within psychotic subjectivity. So trance practices within psychotic subjectivity are to be avoided. And if one does facilitate such practices, shamanistic or dance or whatever, one ought to be cautious as to whether the person is having that structure or not. With a neurotic structure, dissolution of barrier may be uncomfortable. Yeah, it may cause even temporary break. Yeah, but that can be brought about or recovered from, because there is name of the father within neurotic structure. Within psychotic structure, it's not the case. It takes laborious process of bringing about delusional metaphor, reorganizing the entire of the symbolic order in order to bring some coherency again into the experience after the break within psychotic structure. So only ideal ego will remain for the fusion type within psychosis. Hence, the rejected material will terribly challenge the ideal ego, will cancel it out, will lacerate it, hence elementary phenomena intruding, etc. Basically, the real intruding upon the narcissistic identification is going to smash it, going to sweep it. Then the long process of recovery will be needed. So trance in this sense is not beneficial. Even within non-fusion type subjectivity, where sense of self is fragile, maybe actual pathological position within neurosis, where self hasn't yet been quite formed because there was not enough, there was name of the father, but not enough guaranteeing presence of that other to symbolize the phenomena, yeah, bring coherence to psychic realm. In this sense, also, trance practices, dissolution of barrier will be dangerous, because the subject will enter into actual pathological state, a state whereby somatic intensities or internal fragmentation will be overtaken one, which is not going to be pleasant. There won't be no explanation. There will be like this internal horror, internal hell dawning upon one, which again will take a long process, laborious process of recovery. It's not going to be as devastating and psychotic episode whereby hallucinations and somatic delusions arise, but it's also going to be quite challenging, quite hard to deal with. So these are concerns of fusion type and actual pathology. Actual pathology. So basically, if the person has been traumatized or initial structural trauma has not been processed sufficiently, the solution of the barrier will cause problems on the somatic level, somatic disturbances, distress, hypochondria as well, fear, panic, post-traumatic stress disorder spectrum of phenomena may arise. So, if that's the case, if the sense of self is already fragile, this practice should be stepped away from, not engaged with. If one feels like one's entering that state, it is necessary to step away from the practice, refrain from looking within. Instead, just go for a walk in the forest and rest, eat some nourishing food, do physical exercise, stuff like that. But don't apply attentiveness to dissolve the barrier between conscious and unconscious. However, if that's not present, if one's neurosis is stabilized, obsessive or hysteric or whatever, then the solution of barrier is of benefit, because you can recover relying on the name of the Father after your wild night. So, let us look at something else. Let us look at Zifagun. Zifagun. What is Zifagun? How do you write it? Okay. Zifagun. Yeah. Spontaneous expression of energy. Of energy. This is the phenomena which can occur, which can come about in the process of Qi-gun or Nei-gun, and it's beneficial, essentially, at the earlier stages of the practice, yeah. Because we need to release the body, we need to purge the blockages, we need to dissolve the stagnation, basically shake the body open, yeah. And that's what assists that. Zifagun can be induced via emission of qi, emission of qi by a teacher or a master or whatever into the body of a practitioner. It can be self-induced via pressurization of qi. Pressurization of qi, and you might have already started experiencing those phenomena whereby you work on this building of the magnetism within the lower abdomen, consolidating the field, the pressure builds, and something starts to shake and distort and whatever, and it can get quite strong depending on how blocked that body is, how channels are blocked. Yeah. Another method is activation of certain points. Activation of points. Regardless of what method is, most common will be this one, pressurization of qi. Simply when enough qi builds, it starts to push into the channels and basically kick through the blockages and purge everything. And normally it unfolds in accordance with the following patterns. First we have tremor, shaking, something starts to vibrate. By the way, the word dance, the Asian for dance comes from actually the word tremor, translation. Don't remember which language it was, French or whatever. But yeah, which kind of connotes to where actually dance come from the spontaneous expression of energy initially. Tremor, shaking, twisting of spine. One starts getting contorted bending in the waist, bending in the waist, and fold, so I can actually fold in half. Swinging back and forth. Again, not by yourself. It's a spontaneous expression of energy. It all comes from the inside. Swinging, prostrating, plastering on the floor. One can actually be very quickly plastered or face down when the yin chi just draws one up onto it on the floor. Dancing. Whatever shapes one makes, the body does. It all comes from spontaneous improvisation. What else? Martial arts. Spontaneous martial arts. One starts emulate forms of martial arts, especially if those elasticities, those patterns of movement have been trained into one's body. One will be doing that and the Zifagun. Spontaneous mudras. Making shapes with one's hands. Quite often, like for myself, it will be very often to do the shapes of various Indonesian dances and intricate curvatures and whatever. People do all sorts of stuff, this and that. Basically, energy just organizes itself in the channels, resulting in those shapes coming out of you. Vocalizing. Vocalizing, making sounds, making whatever, spontaneous recitative, growls, howls, sobs, anything goes really. Running. Running in circles, back and forth, running into walls, running on the walls. Spider-Man basically. Bouncing. Becoming quite buoyant and starting bouncing. Rolling. This is getting more and more fun, isn't it? Rolling, stretching, stretching out on the floor, or curling into like a baby pose, like in yoga. Stretching, curling, until eventually just finding stillness, yeah? That means that the Zifagun has subsided, or that amount of chi which has been pressurized has simply been exhausted. Finding stillness. So that process goes. I should have added like, yeah, well, we talk about later. Crying and emotional releases. Yeah, let's talk about this. Emotions will start to come up, isn't it? Apart from a skillful transformation of the emotions, which we can do out of consciousness, of course, at first it's not going to be possible. The intensity will be too strong of those emotions. Whatever suppressed traumas, hurts, upsets, losses, or perhaps enjoyment which has not been expressed, joy, excitation, it will be getting expressed, yeah. So emotional releases start to come up. And often people hunt, particularly these. Well, I myself was doing that, was hunting for that because I'm so suppressed or whatever. I need emotional release. Which is nothing wrong with that. Blockages in the chi manifests and the blockages in the psyche. One loses ability to actually emphasize, to feel, to express joy and anger or whatever. And then bottles up, it eventually needs bursting. However, there is a cautious with that, because this can be addictive, and one may think that by releasing these emotions one gets rid of them, but that's not true. Having expressed them at the full-blown spectrum, one hasn't released shit. One has simply reinforced the experience into one's body. Yeah, it's not uncommon whereby like you see a person howling in the class and whatever. You see them the next couple of years, they're still howling and whatever, and nothing really changes for them. Why? Because they keep re-anchoring that state into themselves. So how emotional releases are done properly, they're done minimally. For example, if one feels sad, one can shed a tear, for example. One can experience this initial somatic expression of sadness, but one is to restrain it from turning into a full-blown crying or howling or whatever, or getting hysterical, because that will reinforce the emotion into the body, thus making it a part of self again. We don't want that. We want it to express it, to acknowledge, attention, once again, recognize that phenomena has a reason, but not pursuing it, letting it minimally express and be abandoned. Yeah. Sometimes, of course, the emotion is strong, especially when it's fresh, when someone has lost somebody. It's very fresh. No, you don't repress it in that fashion. Then you allow it. Yeah. Grief, especially like that, or expression of shock as well. That needs to be abreacted straight away, or can be. Sometimes it cannot, and then longer process of release will ensue. However, attentiveness and discernment to the phenomena in the long run is of greater benefit than trying to cry it out or scream it out or laugh it out or whatever. So that will come up in the process of Zifagun, in the process of spontaneous expression. Yeah. Zifagun can turn into trance if one as well dissolves the barrier and falls into a state, yeah. But Zifagun essentially is not trance. It can turn into a trance. It has a potential, but it can be done with a complete conscious attentiveness. One doesn't need to fall into trance in order to activate chi within one's body. That process can go along with your attentiveness. Yeah. Then, when this mental dissolving is done, then this is when it turns into the trance. But without it, it's just expression of energy. The caveat is that both trance and Zifagun are enjoyable. Whatever enjoyable can be a cause for clinging. And obviously, for the spiritual practice, we don't want clinging. We want to abandon it. So Zifagun, once it has played its part, it should be released, it should be abandoned. Yeah, it should be let go of. One should not continuously pursue the processes of this unwinding of the body. Yeah. At some stages, one is to actually mentally put a stop to it. Once one has realized that they no longer serve the purpose, that one is just as well without it as one is with it. This is when the Zifagun has played its part and is to be let go of in the process of this energetic development. Same with trance, really. When one can dwell on a continuous basis, sustaining one's mindfulness, and nothing any longer impinges from within with a contingent quality which needs to be abreacted via dissolution of the barrier, fine. It doesn't need to be practiced. Like for myself, when in the previous years, when I was young, I did a lot of that. I did a lot of trance, a lot of Zifagun, a lot of processing on this level in order to just purge the body, open the channels. After some time, it just stopped being relevant. So I ceased that process. But it's very beneficial that you do go through this process, because the more you go through this process, the less neurotic you are. With greater joy and ease, you can meet the formations of your mind, formations of unconscious, and just see them for what they are, and know that you are not a victim of them, that they do not really cause you any trouble. You know that you can express them at your leisure, whatever. And the more you do it, the more skillful ways of expressing these energies you find. After a while, you start understanding that everything is simply chi. By working with chi, mobilizing it, consolidating, whatever, directing it to undertake various mental processes, development of virtues, we can make use of that chi, and it no longer needs to oppress us via unconscious reactivity. Basically, the more we merge our mind with the path, the less there will be idle, volatile energy which is potential for developing or developing into neurotic symptoms. So that's all there is to say in regards to trance. Thank you.